Welcome to Open Your Reality. Welcome to We Are One, Typical Skeptic Podcast. Today we have on some very, very special guests, thanks to Rob, and that is Ryder Lee and Jay Weidner. And these guys are authors, speakers, lecturers, researchers, and filmmakers. And they created a documentary called Solving the Crime of the Century, JFK X, which came out July 11th of this year. And it's my honor, as well as Ken and Rob, to have both of you guys on the show. Welcome to the show, guys.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for having us on, Chad. Appreciate it. It's
Yeah.
going to be a fun discussion. They're ramping up all the propaganda for JFK right now, so it's going to be a good time.
Nice.
I know. I just asked you guys, I had one strike on a live stream in the past, so we want to try to, keep it as rated G version as possible so YouTube doesn't strike us again. But we are going to be talking about the JFK conspiracy primarily. I mean, you guys know about a lot of things, but you're very well versed on the JFK assassination. And I was going to jump right into it. Let me just stop the music here. But I was going to jump right into it with a question that really, I was really struck by the 1991 Oliver Stone movie JFK. It was filled with almost every celebrity in Hollywood. A lot of people said it wasn't true to the representation of what really happened on November 22nd, 1963. Did you guys see the film, and what was your take on it? How close of a representation was the movie to what you believe actually happened?
Well, I think it's a great movie. I've always thought it was a great movie. It's really well done. The editing is like second to none. And I think Oliver Stone, working with what he had, did a pretty good job. I think that he was really the first guy to enhance the Zapruder film for the first time. And kudos to him for doing that and putting it into the film, although he did edit the Zapruder film in the film to cut out certain things which we reveal in our film. And what I think actually happened is that Oliver Stone, who's a really good filmmaker and a really good writer, wrote some of the best scripts in Hollywood, Scarface and a lot of others. I think he got into the film with this whole idea that he was going to explore the conspiracy behind it. And then when he received the highly enhanced version of the Zapruder film, he, as a filmmaker, knowing what he was really looking at, the dawning realization of what he was seeing, I think, caused him to rethink how he would do the editing on JFK. And if you watch the edit part where Kevin Costner is introducing the Zapruder film, you will see that it's very, very carefully edited. Unfortunately for us, he did not run the film in whole as it is for 28 seconds, like you would hope he would. He cut it up and edited out the crucial 2 seconds where Kennedy emerges from behind the Stemmons freeway sign, putting something on the side of his face, and the final hit. Those 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds, are cut out of the film, which tells me that he saw what we saw in our enhanced version of the Zapruder film and realized that he had to cut it out because it was just, for 1991, it would have been too much for the audience, too much for them to see. And I don't blame him. He had already gone down a path of looking at the conspiracy, and he couldn't go. I'm a filmmaker. I know once you commit to a budget, you can't start changing the script, start changing things around. Your investors will go absolutely crazy to be fired. So I understand where Oliver Stone's coming from. Either way, it doesn't matter. The film's a masterpiece. It was the first film to really bring out all of the BS around the Kennedy assassination. No one to that time ever had approached any of it in any kind of way like he did. And so I really think it's a great film. His son, Sean's a good friend of mine. He's in the film. And so I love JFK. Thank Oliver Stone for bringing the enhanced version of the Zapruder film to our attention, because when I saw that enhanced version of the Zapruder film for the brief period it was on YouTube about 10 years ago, it was on for about 6 weeks and then was taken up. That's where I saw everything that was actually going on in the Zapruder film, inspiring Ryder and I to get an.
Hold on, Jay. You just muted the mic.
It's just going off by itself.
Ryder and I to get an enhanced version of the Zapruder film and then use it in our movie to show you what's really going on.
Okay. And by the way, I just want to say to all the viewers out there that are watching, if you want to drop your questions, we might be able to get to some questions towards the end of the show. I know a lot of people have a lot of questions about the JFK conspiracy. So thank you, Jay.
Yep.
Rob, if you have a question, you can chime in.
Yeah, I don't think I asked you guys this the first time we did it. Why do you think, because we didn't bring it out, but now I guess it's out. Why do you think Kennedy would have wanted to fake his death? Like, I think that's the motive is the question, right? That's what we all want to know. Is it because of the heat he had on him from the CIA, the mob, all the other stuff?
Yeah, I think he got in. He was a rich kid who had, he was brave. He served in the military, got wounded. And, I think he got in there, and he and Bobby were going to, they looked at America and they saw what a mess it was and that the criminals were taking over, just like they are right now. And they actually thought they could do something about it, not realizing how very, very strong, you realize two things that they didn't realize. They didn't realize that the CIA, because they couldn't operate domestically, it started incorporating the mob in the late 1950s to do hits and criminal activity for them. That's the first thing they didn't realize, that there was a relationship between the mob and the CIA. But two, they didn't realize how ruthless the mob had become. And I think between the two of them, Kennedy, besides, he also had Addison's disease, which is really a fatal disease, which he caught while serving in the military. And I think he just wanted out. It was not the great playboy life that he thought it was. It was hell on earth. Everybody was lying to him. And we see it today right now. Right, Ryder?
And he made a lot of enemies too, though, Rob. And we have a big section on the mob in our film JFKX early on, which is really one of my favorite parts of the movie, because people that have studied JFK and done all this research hardly ever talk about RFK, which was JFK's attorney general and brother, and what he was doing to take down organized crime and the mob. I was completely stunned and shocked by what RFK was seeing in the early 60s while trying to prosecute and take down these mobsters. Everything that he was saying is what people are seeing in the community today. It's unbelievable. He's like, I have uncovered a great plot of governmental organized crime. These crime families, they operate in groups, 7 to 13 members, like everything that is talked about within the conspiracy community today, RFK was talking about in the early 60s. It's one of the most mind-blowing things. And I was back and forth with Jay. I was calling him like every other day. I was like, Jay, I don't know, dude. I think the mob, because the mob had a really big motive to do it. And then we also show in our documentary JFKX, the FBI informant that was talking about how he would actually assassinate JFK. And almost verbatim, what he said is what the official story played out as. He was like, oh, well, how would you assassinate JFK? We would do it from one of those office buildings. On the top floor of one of these office buildings, we would do it. And we would take a gun up there. You don't have to actually take a gun up there because they all break down. You can take it up in pieces. And then they were like, well, how the FBI informant was like, well, how would you get away with that? And he was like, oh, well, they'll just pick somebody up minutes after the assassination for public perception. That's almost identically what they did.
Yeah, but here's my question. And Jay might be able to answer this. I just wanted to throw this in there real quick. There's conspiracy that the Kennedys got favors from the mob to get in office, then they turned on the mob once they got in office. What do you guys feel about that? And sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt anybody.
No, that's exactly right. The Joe Kennedy, their dad, who was a mobster, asked the Chicago mob to throw the Chicago election so Illinois would go for Kennedy, which it did, and all of a sudden at the last second, whole bunch of votes, just like what happened in 2020, appeared out of nowhere, all for Kennedy in Chicago, and it was clearly the Chicago mob. Sidney Korshak and all those guys were working with him, and then after they got in. I think, and I can only speculate here, that Joe Kennedy because Joe Kennedy's the reason Bobby Kennedy was Attorney General. John and Bobby were searching for attorney generals after John got elected, and Joe came in the room and said, "What are you doing?" He said, "What do you mean?" He says, "You got the best attorney general ever, your brother." And he said, "Well, that's smacks of nepotism." And Joe said, "I don't care. I want him as your attorney general." And so Joe really is the one who appointed Bobby to be attorney general. And then Joe, who had, I have to say, some bones to pick with members of the mob, especially of a certain ethnic group, he went after them. And that in the rest is history. And again, I think Joe underestimated, the power. What he underestimated was how much the government had the mob and the CIA had infiltrated the federal government, which is what Bobby was finding out. This Ryder's talking about. As Ryder was going through and trying to find all these clips about Bobby, he kept finding out that Bobby's revelation was that the mob had taken over the deep state, which he didn't say that deep state then. He called it something different, but that's what he meant. And that's exactly right. And that's what should have alerted Joe to stop any attempt to go after the mob after Bobby had discovered how deeply infiltrated the government really was by mobsters.
And then, Joe Kennedy, that's how he made all of his money. He made all of his money working for the mob and getting alcohol down here during Prohibition from Canada. That's how he made millions of dollars. That's how he became rich. So he was already encompassed in the mob mentality. And it's kind of our view, within the movie that something happened and Joe was like, the mob wanted Kennedy to do something for them because they did the favor for getting him elected. And the mob turned around and was like, "Hey, you need to do something for us." And then Kennedy's like, "No, we're not going to do that." And then Joe turns around and is like, sticks his brother RFK on him and starts prosecuting all of them.
Which was, by the way, probably the Bay of Pigs, because Cuba was a big gambling site there. And then when Castro took over, he kicked out the mob. It's all in the Godfather 2 movie. And so I think that the Bay of Pigs, which was the invasion of Cuba by the CIA and anti-Castro forces, I think that was supposedly the payback. And Kennedy pulled them back from the full invasion. Therefore, the mob felt that he had betrayed them. I do believe that's what happened there.
Yeah, I wanted to know also, because you guys are again came out with this documentary called JFKX. And by the way, if people want to get it, where can they find it?
Amazon Prime.
On Amazon Prime. Okay, I have Amazon Prime. I wanted to ask you, how is your work different from all the other documentaries and books that came before? What is the major part of your work that sets it apart?
We're the first documentary on JFK that is completely neutral politically. That's why it's become so dangerous and why they're going out of their way to obfuscate what this movie is saying, because we don't take a point of view. We don't think that the CIA did it. We don't think the mob did it. We think they all wanted him dead. The military wanted him dead. We think the people in the South that were against desegregation probably wanted him dead. He had a lot of enemies and he knew it, but we take a completely neutral position politically, which really irritates everybody, because the left can't attack it for being right and the right can't attack it for being left. And I believe that is why this movie is so dangerous. Since this movie has come out, for the first time in the history of the JFK assassination, there are literally every network, every on Amazon,
Hulu,
Paramount. They're all doing shows on the JFK assassination, but they're all doing it from the establishment point of view that's been done over and over and over and over again. JFK was a womanizer. JFK, pissed off the mob. JFK had the CIA after him. All true. But that's not why he did what he did on November 22nd, 60 years ago today, because what he did, this is something I'm going to say really fast, and then I'm going to cut out because I'm saying way too much. But once you get in to the cabal establishment, you can't get out. That's the thing. Once you're in, you can never get out. You're in for life. And people don't realize that. Oh, good, I'm in. I'm going to make tons of money. I got a monthly check coming, and I'm going to have chicks and drugs and all this. And they think it's all great and everything until they find out when they're about 50. Oh, by the way, you're never getting out, and you're going to stay here until you're dead. And that's what Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi and all these guys are. They're in it. They can't get out. John F. Kennedy knew that. He realized that he cannot get out. He's in it for his life. And so he said, I'm not doing it. And he found a way to get out. And by the way, I think it happens a lot. I think a lot of the deaths that we think are happening are actually people faking their deaths to get out of the agreements that they made.
I don't know if you could talk about this because, maybe you want people to watch the documentary, but are you saying that the JFK assassination was faked? Is that what you're, yes?
Yep.
But with the Zapruder film, you can clearly see his brains were coming out. What? No?
Nope. What you see in the Zapruder film, well, the first thing you should notice about the Zapruder film is that we have a high-powered rifle going off either up on a high-rise building or across the grassy knoll, which is about about 45 feet away from Elm Street. Okay. Now, I don't know how many of you have heard a high-powered rifle going off. But a high-powered rifle going off in a cavernous place of downtown area is going to be friggin' loud. And I mean loud. Everybody's going to hear it. They're going to do this. They're going to duck. Anyone around where the gun's going off is going to completely flip out. You're going to panic. If you've ever had bullets ripping through the air past your ears, you know what terror is. And that is terror. Yet nobody reacts. Nobody in the limousine reacts. None of the bystanders react. Zapruder himself, who's supposedly standing right in front of the shooter with the bullets whizzing right by Zapruder's head, he doesn't react. His camera doesn't move around quickly or anything. He doesn't duck. He stands there very cool and calm, completely filming the whole time. Nobody. Now they're starting to say that people heard bullets, but at the time of our making it, we couldn't find any research of bullets going off, people hearing bullets going off, which is insane. You can't put a silencer on a high-powered rifle. If Oswald was even sticking out through the window and firing, by the second shot, first shot, everyone's down like this. Second shot, everyone's looking up and seeing who the hell is shooting. Okay. By the third shot, everybody's identified the shooter. Everybody, because that's our human reaction. So whether it's a grassy knoll or the 6th floor depository, it doesn't matter, because that everybody's going to hear those guns going off. It's going to be so loud, and even the people in the limousine would be ducking because they wouldn't really know what's going on. But nobody ducks, nobody reacts. None of the bystanders behind them react or duck or anything. And that's exactly what you would expect if there were no guns going off, because there were no guns going off. And that's the way it is. The whole thing was a gigantic fake. I don't know what the motive was outside of Kennedy trying to get away from the various people who had definitely put hits on him. We prove in the movie that the mob had put a hit out over a month and a half earlier on Kennedy, and for sure the FBI had told Kennedy that they had a hit out on you. Why would he be driving around in an open limousine among tall, high-rise buildings when he just got a warning that's exactly how they're going to hit you? Well, I don't know. And so when you put it all together and you realize the J.D. Tippit angle, which is the other, Oswald shoots 2 people that day in Dallas. We don't know if he's ever shot anyone before, but we know he shot 2 people that day. He shot President John F. Kennedy, and then he shot a police officer named J.D. Tippit. J.D. Tippit and John F. Kennedy share one thing together. They are dead ringers. They look exactly like each other. J.D. Tippit's a nickname on the Dallas police force was JFK because they were about the same age. They had the same hairline, the same height, same weight, the same chin, same everything, same eye color. And what a coincidence that Oswald shoots two people that day who just happen to look exactly like each other. And, so once you start uncovering the coincidences that are involved here, then you start realizing that there's something really wrong with the official narrative. And, and the sequel that we should make is, why are they putting us through all this trauma? That's what I want to know.
Well, I'm just really curious. I'm sorry I have to chime in again, but how can they fake the brains coming out and all of that going on? And
first off, when you get hit with a bullet, so a bullet hits you right here, right? A high-powered bullet, this part of doesn't explode. Anyone who's ever gone hunting knows that it's this part that explodes, the part on the other side that explodes, right? So if I get hit here, you're just going to see a little round spot, some blood coming down. But on the other side, you're going to see it all blow out, right? So what you're seeing with the Kennedy assassination is, as he comes around the Stemmons freeway sign, there's a splice, very important. There's a very important.
Hold on, Jay, you got muted again.
Saw that. For some reason, my thing keeps defaulting to mute. As he comes around the Stemmons freeway sign, there's a splice. It's just as he goes behind the freeway sign, which is an alarm to any filmmaker. There shouldn't be any splices. It's a continuous roll of the film, but there's a splice there that is never explained, ever in history.
4 frames missing from the Zapruder film at 2:07 and jumps to 2:12.
And the conspiracy and the government theorists see him doing this and say, oh, he got hit in the neck. The conspiracy theorists say he got hit in the front. The government theorists say he got hit in the back. And you see him doing this, but he's not really doing this. What he's really doing is he's doing this. It's very clear. He's doing something. It's like reaching into his coat pocket and he's sticking something on the side of his cheek that sticks there, and you can see it. And for the full 2 seconds that Oliver Stone cut out of JFK, you can clearly see the shadow of whatever this object is right here on the cheek, which just happens to be right where the explosion happens. What that is, it's a Hollywood device called a squib. A squib is a metal plate, and it has gunpowder, slight amount of gunpowder pile with an igniting device here, fake blood on the top, and a prophylactic that surrounds the whole thing. Stick them right here so you can stick it on the body, and then you pull the string. And nowadays you do it with a remote. In those days you pull the string, it will go off, and the actor reacts, and it looks like you just got shot. Well, that's what Kennedy did. He stuck a squib on the side of his face. Jackie comes over, pulls the string, the squib goes off, and he kind of reacts, but not really, because Ryder's editing shows that he doesn't react as soon as the explosion happens. He reacts about 2 frames after, which is impossible. There would not be even a 1/16 of a second delay between the explosion and him reacting to the explosion. It would happen instantly, but he doesn't. And he disappears under the thing. Jackie, instead of freaking out because bullets are flying all around her, she gets up, makes her body completely obvious to the whole world, crawls on the back of the trunk, picks something up, and gets back in the car. And what she picks up is the metal plate that you can clearly see in our enhanced version of the Zapruder film, rolling up the top of his head after the blast goes off and flying off. It shines, the metal shines in the noonday sun, and you can clearly see it. But here's the thing. All JFK researchers can be forgiven. All of them, government, conspiracy, all of them, because none of them knew what a squib was. None of them had the knowledge of Hollywood esoteric technology, which would let them know that this is what a squib is. And I do. And when I saw the Oliver Stone enhanced version, I knew immediately that that was a squib. Because I had worked with them many, many, many times. And but in those days, nobody knew what a squib was. They held the film back until 1974 to show it on Geraldo Rivera's show in 1974, but still it was a fuzzy version. Nobody could see it. So nobody, even squib experts, wouldn't even be able to see what was going on. It wasn't really until we got the version where we ran it through that software where they reinvigorate old Hollywood films and turn them into looking like they were shot on HD 4K. When we showed that version of the Zapruder film, only then did it become obvious what we were actually seeing. When you couple that, and I'm sorry, Ryder, I'm filibustering, when you couple that with the fact that nobody's reacting to guns going off anywhere in the whole place, then you have to say that there's something else going on here. And that something else is that Kennedy faked his death for.
Jay, you got muted.
Ryder, I want to say something real quick. If I can jump in. You mentioned the cool little story there where you were going back and forth with Jay saying, no, I don't think so. Maybe, I don't know. Jay, when did you realize, and when did you convince Ryder of this theory that you were writing into? I'm assuming it was after you saw the squib, but what did you guys really see in making of the movie that led you down that way to write it that way? Because it definitely would have been a shock. Like, it's real.
Well, I think I'll let you go. I just want to say this one. Well, I think the key to the whole thing is when we show that the people in the background of the Zapruder film are as big or bigger than the people in the limousine. Then you can see that it's been optically messed with
and altered.
And when people watch that and I watch them, they go, oh, because they realize it's impossible for those people to be that big.
Yeah, I was back and forth several times with it, and Jay didn't.
And I was just going to say, like,
sorry, Rob. We're going on some kind of.
Oh, sorry, Ryder. Go ahead. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, I know. I was just going to say, like, for people that sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I was back and forth several times with making the film. JFK, you got me all confused here now, Rob. Jay didn't need to actually convince me of anything. Once I was back and forth, I was calling him like every single day. I was like, hey, I think it was the mob. Called him back. Oh, I think it was the CIA. I called him back the next day. I was like, no, I don't think so. And then the thing that sold it all for me was the autopsy photos. That's what made the whole thing come together. Because the autopsy photos show something completely different than what is shown in the Zapruder film. The Zapruder film shows a shot to the right side of JFK. His head goes back into the left, like some people were talking about in the chat, that famous thing. Back into the left, But the autopsy photos only show a shot to the back of the head. It is impossible for him to be shot in the back of the head and his head goes back. If someone's shot in the back of the head, you go forward. You go all the way forward. And in the Zapruder film, it shows the shot to the right side and he goes back. Right. So, and then, coupling that with the also the murder of Officer J.D. Tippit and him being his nickname being JFK and them looking almost identical. It was just too many coincidences there. And also J.D. Tippit being shot 3 times, once in the head, once in the back, and once in the neck. I'm like, what? You're telling me that this guy was shot the exact amount of times that JFK was said to have been shot? And they look almost identical to each other. And that's what Oswald was originally arrested for. He was never arrested for the murder of JFK. He was arrested for the murder of J.D. Tippit.
Yeah, that's what he thought he was getting. Yeah.
The public put the perception on him that he also killed the president. But we show all the footage in our film of him talking about it, how he's saying, oh, I'm just a patsy. I didn't even know that the president had been shot. He didn't have any idea. He wasn't ever arrested for the murder of the president.
So what you guys are saying is that unlike the official story, like the Warren Commission says, that Oswald had nothing to do with the shooting of JFK and nothing to do with the shooting of J.D. Tippit. Is that correct? Yes. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Have you guys looked into the doctor? I think I wrote it down. Sorry, I apologize. There was a doctor that actually was in the hospital with Connolly and said that there was a bullet that dropped out. Like 10 witnesses heard the bullet fall out, and then they said, well, there was no bullet. That an extra bullet basically was part of the talk. Can you talk about that a little bit for people who may have heard that and heard your theory? I've watched the movie. I loved it. It was great. You just have, what do you think Connolly was in on the situation with everyone? Of course.
Yeah, I do. I think that he was Jackie Kennedy's top Secret Service agent, and Jackie was in on it. And I believe that he planted the bullet on the stretcher, to give some reason that there was actually a Mannlicher Carcano involved in the assassination. And and they ran with that bullet as the magic bullet, even though it looks like it was never even fired from a gun ever. So
yeah, all the pictures said the same thing. Yep. Correct.
Yep.
Of that bullet.
Yeah, and it should also be noted that at the 6th floor depository, with the box where they found the Carcano that supposedly Oswald had buried in a box and ran, right? There was a fingerprint they found there, and that fingerprint was Lyndon Baines Johnson's top assistant. Yeah,
I think a lot of people would piece him if there was a murder that he was somehow subjected to some of that. Another question that I have before I let you guys run with this for a little bit would be, there seems to be a lot of moving pieces that would be involved in that. Have you guys started to kind of piece? I mean, he made a lot of enemies, right? I mean, you had the move to a hard currency, you had Russia, you had the mob, you had a lot of pieces moving in different directions. So have you guys kind of pieced together like who would be involved in this whole staged event and who would have no idea? Have you seen things that you're like, they said this or they did this, they had no idea? Do you think everyone was involved or you?
No, I think hardly any were involved. Johnson was clearly involved because he was the chief beneficiary. Jackie was involved. I believe that Connolly and his wife had to be involved, and the driver and the Secret Service agent in the front seat. But Kennedy, they shooed away the Secret Service agents, so they weren't there. That would usually be fun.
Jay, you got mute. Yeah,
he got it. He's on it.
So the Secret Service agents, for the most part, were free, but the leaders of the Secret Service must have known. The FBI confiscated all the film at the scene, so they must have seen what was really going on, but not the lower guys, the upper guys.
How would the mob have been kept in the dark is my question, because he did it to get away from the mob, I would assume. Is that what you think as well? Yeah,
and so the mob immediately the mob's like, oh, we didn't have anything to do with it. We didn't have anything to do with it. And the CIA had set up so Oswald, who was a Russian, defector, would look like it was him. So that would shoo away all evidence that the mob had anything to do with it. And, it was perfectly set up to make it look like, a crazy Russian defector had shot the president, and everybody would get away with it for free. So that was probably set up long before the whole event was staged, because JFK would not want the mob to feel that they were the ones that did it. JFK would want the mob to be confused as to who did it. And they were very confused. For the last 10 years, from 63 to 73, all the mob did was point at each other. He did it. He did it. He did it. They did it, without anybody offering any proof of anything. And that's because Kennedy had outwitted his enemies and got away with it.
Well, I have a few questions about Oswald. Was Oswald in the book depository or not? You just said it was an assistant of LBJ was there. But was Oswald in the book depository?
Yeah, sure. He was
He
working
was.
there that day.
He
Sure.
worked there, right?
He worked there, and people said that he came with he told them curtain rods. It was
Yeah. So let's address that. So if you're carrying a gun that can be broken up into two pieces so that it's about this long, would you carry the whole gun?
Of course
That's
not.
what they're saying. That he carried the whole gun and said it was curtain rods when you could easily break a gun up into little pieces. I mean, come on. Only people that don't understand guns would even entertain such a ridiculous notion that Oswald had to bring the gun to work intact.
Were there witnesses that placed him on the second floor lunchroom at the time as well? I heard somebody mention that in a comment of another video. Was that accurate?
Yep.
Where you heard? Yeah.
Yep. That was accurate.
So you're saying Oswald never fired from the book depository?
Oswald took a paraffin test that day. It's about 4:00 in the afternoon that day. A paraffin test determines whether you have gunpowder residue on your face, on your arms, on your hand. And they couldn't prove that he had residue on his arms and hands, but they absolutely proved he had no residue on his face, which is impossible if you're firing a gun. There's no way that's going to backfire on you and you're going to get gunpowder residue there. So no, he never fired a rifle. They knew that. The Dallas police knew that. The prosecutors knew that. The Warren Commission knew that. They all knew it, yet they completely ignored the paraffin test.
And we have that in our film too. The police chief talking about that they tested Oswald for paraffin and it was shown that he could not have fired a rifle that day. So they all knew it, and then they took Oswald out really quick.
Yep.
They had him walking out, had Jack Ruby come up, shoot him in the stomach. He's wearing a black sweater, not able to see if there's any blood. No autopsy was ever done on Oswald.
With a Hollywood microphone right there, hung right above where Ruby shoots Oswald, as if somebody knew some kind of significant event would occur at that spot, even though he was just supposed to be walking through the parking lot that day. Come on, who would go up there with a ladder and hang at those days about a $2,000 Hollywood microphone up there? It's impossible. Yet nobody ever shows you that photograph, but we do.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a hypothetical question. But suppose that Oswald could actually that he did actually shoot. There's some people that say that he could never really target Kennedy that well, and some say that he could. Would he be able to, in fact, target Kennedy precisely like he did from that depository?
Maybe on the first shot, because that's the one you get the longest setup for, but definitely not the second and third. They've reproduced the shooting. Nobody, the best marksman in the world, have failed over and over to reproduce what Oswald did that day. So the first shot, yeah, you could have maybe. That's a long way. I don't know how many of you have fired a high-powered rifle over 100 yards, but to hit something at 100 yards, that's moving. That's hard. But the thing is, it's click, bang, click, 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 aim, bang, click, 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 aim, bang. How long does that take, right?
And they closed off the sixth floor, correct? You can only go to the seventh floor now. Is that accurate?
You could know the sixth floor is where the museum is for the assassination now.
I had another question when Ken jumped in. But my question is, the magic bullet. Why would they, if they were faking it, why would they talk about this magic bullet? Why wouldn't they just show everything congruous so people wouldn't be suspicious?
Because they have the Zapruder film, and the Zapruder film only shows 2 hits, supposedly. It doesn't show any, really, but it shows the neck, which isn't really a hit, and then it shows the side of the head. So they had to explain how Oswald got 2 shots off in 6 seconds. And then, of course, there's James Teague, who was a bystander, who claims that he got hit when a bullet hit the curb and a piece of concrete went and hit him in the head. We don't know if any of that's true. For all we know, they had somebody up on top of the roof just pot-shotting bullets around just to make everything look good. We don't know any of that. We just know that he didn't really get wounded in the neck, and we know that the wound to the head is completely suspect.
But did Governor Connolly? He was supposedly shot through his body and his
so supposedly the bullet hits Kennedy. The Warren Commission says bullet hits Kennedy here. I don't know where it comes out, but somehow it flies out, goes a right angle, flies and hits Connolly in the back. So it's the magic bullet. Oh no. And then it flies out of Connolly and hits him in the wrist. So there's bullets flying around like something from outer space. And
it goes through his femur of a guy that was 6'4", over 200 pounds.
Yeah.
Which they said that would, no way.
So was Connolly actually hit? Was that, I mean, I know that's part of the official story, but do you think they made that up too?
Well, he certainly looks pretty good. Ryder found a video of an interview of him in the hospital a couple days later, and I'm like, wait a minute. This guy looks, completely staged. He's got makeup on. He's clearly scripted lines, but he looks like $1 million. There's no way he got hit by. Remember, the bullet itself is about that big, solid metal. When that sucker hits you, man, it tears flesh, it rips bone, it crashes through muscle. It's not Hollywood. Back in '63, you could get away with a little bit of blood going out, and because everybody in Hollywood, Gary Cooper would get shot 4 times, and there'd be a little about the size of a quarter, blood here and there, which would never happen in real life. So back in '63, you could get away with saying, "Oh yeah, that's a hit," but come on. That's not any sniper will tell you that is not a hit. That if Kennedy got hit here by a Mannlicher Carcano, the entire top of his head would be gone, just disappear. It would just splatter it to hell. This is all just soft tissue in here. There's nothing stopping it. There's no muscle up there.
Jay, your microphone.
It's interesting too because the Connolly part that we put in the documentary in the third act, like Jay was saying, he looked pristine, and that would not. If you were just shot a couple of days before, I don't think that you would be able to. It sounds like he's given like a speech, like he's given like a presidential speech, or he's doing a public speech. And whenever he's laying in his bed, you would think that he would be on some form of painkillers, that he would be drowsy. But no, he's like stern. He's saying everything confidently. So it's like, I don't know what's going on there. It was really interesting. And there's other things that we put in the documentary that's never been, that a lot of people have no idea about, like the discussion between LBJ and Jackie Kennedy that I have shown to several JFK researchers, and they have never heard it before. And it's really interesting the way that LBJ is talking to Jackie. He's like coming on to Jackie. He's like trying to he's like, 10 days after this, no consoling her, no telling her, oh, I'm sorry.
She's not sad.
He's
not
like,
sad at all.
Why don't you just come over, Jackie? Just come on over. If you ever get lonely, we can take a walk around the house. We can take a walk in the park. Like, it's unbelievable.
Yep.
And no one has ever heard that before. Well,
yeah, LBJ's coming on to Jackie. Jackie's actually flirting with LBJ, and supposedly she just lost her husband a week and a half before. And nobody's saying, oh, I'm sorry about Jack or anything. This is their first phone conversation. There's no consoling. There's nothing. That's because they both know he didn't die.
Oh, I was going to ask you okay, go ahead, Ken, please.
So this is 60 years today, obviously. That's why we are talking to you today. The premise of this is launched a number of things on this day. The conspiracy conspiracy theorist was kind of born after this event. Do you think this was one of the first events in misinformation, or do you think it was something else staged before this or staged after this that you guys can speak to? Would you guys consider yourselves conspiracy theorists, by the term of when this thing was launched?
Well, if you want to call me a conspiracy theorist, that's fine. But then I get to call you a conspiracy coincidence.
Oh, I love that term, by the way. And I'm definitely a conspiracy theorist. You can mark me down for that one, because if the magic bullet, according to the event history, if the magic bullet is science, then I'm out of science.
Well, the thing about that, our film is that It's upset the community a lot. It's upset the conspiracy community. The conspiracy community normally they don't like the film, and that's okay because we didn't really make it for them. We made it for healing purposes. We're putting it out there that we solved the crime of the century. And the conspiracy theorists really tend to not like it because it really debunks all of their theories and their preconceived notions of what happened 60 years ago today.
But it certainly is a theory, though, Ryder. I mean, granted, you backed it up in your film, and kudos for that. But what I'm saying is it is another theory to a conspiracy. The conspiracy doesn't always mean that somebody else, infiltrated it. It's also a conspiracy. Like somebody conspired. If he conspired to save himself and save his family, it's still a conspiracy, right? I mean,
if it's a conspiracy, then tell me what is on the side of JFK's face.
Yeah.
What is that? I mean, you can clearly see it on the side of JFK's face. There's no getting around it. There's something there. There's something on the side of his face. Like there's the thing. Yeah, there is speculation and there is some theory to our documentary. But what we talk about with the Zapruder film is what you see. Like that's logical. It's a logical conclusion that you come to there. Now, there, like I was mentioning, there is some theorizing and some speculation surrounding what happened after. But what we show you in the Zapruder film is accurate. It's the clearest version of the Zapruder film that's ever been made.
I mean, right.
Yeah, I just wanted to say you're seeing like never seen before footage of the Zapruder film. Like I think before anybody makes a determination on the JFK film, you have to go watch this film. And I don't usually vouch for stuff, but I will vouch for this film. Like it was amazing the way you guys put it together, and it made me think that I think you're right. I mean, I don't really usually, come to conclusions, but when the thing that got me is when Jackie goes to the back of the limo and grabs that thing. That's like, that said it all right there.
And no one has ever been able
she grabbed something. What did she grab?
Yeah. There's also so much speculation. And the first time that I ever seen the Zapruder film, probably in Oliver Stone's film JFK, I was like, why is she trying to get out of the backseat? Why is she trying to get out of the limousine?
Trying to
It
run
never
away,
made any sense to me. I'm like, what is happening here? You would think that if your husband right beside of you gets shot, then you would either duck down or you would use their body as like a shield. Yeah. You wouldn't automatically try and get out of the limousine. There's shots all around everywhere. You're not going to try and get out immediately. You're going to try and duck down. You're going to try and get behind the body or whatever it is that you're doing. And this, what we talk about in the film is the best explanation that I have ever heard for the reason as to why Jackie was trying to get out of the limousine.
There's been some people that speculated that Jackie actually was pulling a gun on JFK, but I understand that you don't see it that way. Were there any other films of the JFK assassination, or was the Zapruder film the only one that you know of, Ryder?
Well, there was another film that was shot from the park just right across the road, but it was completely confiscated. The CIA came in and confiscated any film, any pictures. The only one that was allowed to be seen and shown was Abraham Zapruder's film, which we know has been altered. There's two splices in the Zapruder film. One happens at frame 133, which some people can argue and say that it's not a splice, that it was Abraham Zapruder turning off his camera and then turning his camera back on. But as a filmmaker and someone that's worked with editing, and that would be considered a splice. It's a splice if there's a break in the film. Now, the one that is 100% a splice is a frame 207. Jumps from 207 to 212. There's 4 frames missing. No one has ever come out and said, we don't know who was responsible for those missing frames. And like we were mentioning earlier, the people that are in the background of the Zapruder film is even bigger or the same size as the people that's in the foreground. anybody that has done anything with camera work or has done any kind of videography knows that something in the background cannot be bigger or the same size as something in the foreground. It's
Do you
impossible.
think there's a possibility that the entire Zapruder film was not real, not live? Like, I mean, is that we've seen it in film? We've seen it all over the place with stages and TV and those not quality, TV sets back in the day. When she reaches back, when I saw your film, when she reaches back for whatever that was, my first thing that came to my mind was watching a NASA clip of somebody trying to grab something from space. Like, oops, wait, don't touch it. My bad. Like, it was almost like staged like that, in my opinion. Like,
yeah, that's a really interesting. That's an interesting line of thought, because I actually showed this version of the film to someone that had never seen the Zapruder film ever. They didn't really know anything about JFK. They were younger. They were like 20 years old. And I just showed them this high quality version of the film. And they said, this looks fake. This doesn't even look real.
I mean, if you're going to Photoshop the background, why would you even, I mean, we're assuming that it's an actual shot, right? But we're only assuming that because they told us that. And the only thing that we know about the government is they always tell us something that's not real. So
yeah,
yeah, we'll get into the other conspiracy that I want to ask about as a filmmaker, but I'll let Chad ask. I think he has something to ask.
Yeah, I mean, I have like, as usual, dozens and dozens of questions, but we only have limited time, and we're going to end probably in about 34 minutes. And I'd like to get some of the viewer questions in. So viewers, if you have questions, please leave it. We're talking to Ryder Lee. Jay has dropped off. He may come back.
He'll be back.
Okay, he'll be back. Okay, we're talking about JFK Solving the Crime of the Century, which is the documentary made by Ryder Lee and Jay Weidner. And we of course appreciate you guys coming by. One of the questions that I'd have is, so what was Lee Harvey Oswald in on this from the beginning? Was he was obviously part of this? Did he fake being shot? And then what happened to him afterwards? And also, where did JFK go afterwards? Hitler, so when he left Germany, a lot of people say he left Germany and then he lived in South America. Where did JFK go after his death was faked? And another question I have, I'm just going to throw it out there since there's so many things going on. But JFK obviously had a certain agenda going on. Get out of Vietnam. He wanted to change the currency. He wanted to splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces. There was a lot of things, and he was against the military. When he stepped into office, he realized he was in a lion's den, and that the military was doing a lot of secret coups and things around the world. He wanted to stop that. So he had a lot of enemies. Did they come to him and say, hey, look, we're gonna assassinate you. You got to stop all this. And maybe he didn't want to do it. So they said, look, we'll give you one other option. We'll fake your death and you go out. Is that what happened? And where did he go? And if you could try to remember everything I just said, that would be awesome.
Jay, do you want to go? Well, I guess I'll answer the first thing, because we have it in our film in the third act. During that time of the assassination, there was a lot of tabloid newspapers and tabloid articles that JFK was still alive and that he was at Aristotle Onassis' island, which then Jackie Kennedy later on marries Aristotle Onassis, which is just another coincidence, right? But,
yeah.
Let you pick that up.
And I have friends who live in Greece, near Scorpios Island, and lived there for many, many decades, and who have told me long before I ever began production on this film that the rumors around that area were that, from like maids and workmen and stuff, that there were two men secluded on that island that were there because of Aristotle Onassis, and that one of them was JFK and the other was Howard Hughes. And it should be noted that Onassis was the number one donator to the 1960 Kennedy presidential campaign. They were good friends with Joe, and they were all mobsters, and so there was a lot that united them. And so I believe that, yeah, he probably went off to nice little warm Mediterranean island and lived out his life. And I'm old enough to remember the tabloids, National Enquirer. They have a picture of John F. Kennedy in a wheelchair being wheeled around Scorpios Island by a nurse, right, with a blanket over him like he's sick. And I remember these. I don't know if they were real or not. We don't know, but it makes a lot of sense.
Well, what about Oswald? Was he also whisked away, or did they really kill him, or what?
No, they whisk you away. You go off to another mission. The Oswald that we call Oswald may not even be Oswald. His brother said that it was a completely different person that arrived back from Russia. He was shorter. That his brother was. That Oswald's brother says that Oswald was taller than the guy that arrived back from Russia, and there is some evidence that there's plastic surgery involved in Oswald. So yeah, we don't really know exactly a lot about Oswald. You have to once you understand the Cold War wasn't real, there really wasn't a war between Russia and the United States. That was all fake. It was just done because they were working together as a cabal. Then you realize that the passing back and forth of agents and things is all part of what they're doing. So Oswald's hanging out in New Orleans with far right-wing white Russians who you would think a socialist communist would never hang out with, yet that's who he hung out with, because the milieu has nothing to do with politics. It has to do with something else, something bigger than that.
I'm glad you said that Russia and the U.S. were collaborating, so I can ask my question to lead into that. Since they were collaborating on a lot of things for the cabal and the one world plans that they have, how I want to ask this: were they collaborating on the space race and the moon?
Yep.
Ryder, what do you think about that? Have you, as a filmmaker, what do you think authentically about that? Moon, number one, the moon landing. Number two, the footage that's been released and been seen, because this is the conspiracy that a lot of people want to ask about. I've seen a few questions already about the moon. I had to ask it. So,
well, Jay Weidner really came up with that entire theory, and a lot of people have stolen that from him. He's done a lot of work in that area, decoding The Shining and the faking of the moon landing by Stanley Kubrick. But before I let him get into that, I just do want to say something. The whole technology transfer of this whole thing has been completely blown out of proportion. The JFK was really good friends with James Forrestal, which was the very first Secretary of the Navy. Now, there is proof that JFK was wanting to share some technology with the Russians, but it wasn't like advanced. It wasn't like UFO technology or any of that nonsense, right? It was advanced radar systems. It was advanced military radar systems that he was wanting to give to the Russians, and that has been exacerbated and turned into this anti-gravity type craft, and then that's just snowballed into the whole JFK files, and why that they haven't released the JFK files, because it has something to do with advanced technology. The JFK files hold some sort of secret or something like, but it has nothing to do with that. There's no way that would be the reason that they wouldn't release all the JFK files. It doesn't make any sense. People have been talking about advanced technology for decades now in this community. That is not a big enough reason for them to hold all that back.
What about if NASA was full of it?
Now,
they could expose the whole NASA nonsense.
I don't even think that would even matter. See, the thing about that kind of stuff is that enough time has passed in between them talking about it and everyone speculating about it. They could come out and say, oh, yeah, hey, we did fake the moon landing. No one would care. Just like no one cared whenever they came out in 2020 and said UFOs were real. No one cared. Everyone just went about their lives. No one's going to give a crap if they come out and say it, because they've already been talking about it. The community has been talking about it almost since it happened, since we supposedly went to the moon. They've been talking about how that it's fake. That's not surprising, but what is surprising is our film. And that's how we open up our film. In the very beginning, we're like, why hasn't the government released all of the JFK files. And me personally, and I'm sure a lot of other people that have watched the film would relate to what we have in our film is the reason why they don't release the JFK files, is because what we're talking about in our film would be so devastating, things that people don't talk about, and that's why they're trying to obfuscate
Any connections?
the film. Yeah.
Jay, what do you had a lot, obviously, to add to what I was asking, correct?
Well, I mean, yeah.
Jay, your mic muted.
Yeah.
You know, it was, I guess 12 years ago, I came out with my film Kubrick's Odyssey about how Kubrick used front screen projection to fake the Apollo moon landings. And, you know, you would think that would give me some street cred with the JFK stuff, but I'm being eschewed by the entire conspiracy community. Jeff Rentz won't interview me. Jimmy Church won't have anything to do with me. I've given hundreds of hours to both of these guys, free of charge, never asked for anything in return over the past 15 years or so. I said yes every time they asked me to go on their show. Then I send them JFKX, and I can't get a return phone call now. And so, I mean, you know, to me, this is very telling about the way that the people in our community have reacted to this film. And I understand that the conspiracy theorists have a lot at stake and that they don't want to lose what they have put on the line, mainly years and years of research, for me coming along and saying, well, everybody's wrong because what you see really going on here is JFK putting a squib on the side of his head and Jackie pulling the string, and him falling below the seat and they driving away and never see JFK again. And people don't like that. They want a big, intriguing conspiracy theory. And, you know, my theory is very simple. And all the loose ends fit this theory. Everything from the supposed assassination of Officer J.D. Tippit to the disappearance of Mary Pinchot Meyer a few months after the Kennedy assassination, who was his main lover, to a lot of other things that just remained unexplained now become explainable.
I think it leads to more conspiracies, though. Chad, what do you think?
It does. I mean, I also think, well, we do have a lot of questions from the viewers, really good questions. So I want to leave that for the last 15, 20 minutes. So maybe in about 3 or 4 minutes, we'll go into those viewer questions. And I just want to remind everybody that they can find JFKX, the documentary from Ryder and Jay, on Amazon Prime.
And it's a good watch.
Mm-hmm. So you guys, do you think that JFK was actually this rogue? He turned rogue when he got into office, and he was like, look, I'm just going to do everything my way. Forget about this. I don't want to be part of your cabal. Was he really a good person? Was he really trying to do the right thing, or was he just a puppet?
I don't think he was a puppet. I think he was trying to do the right thing. I think he was incredibly naive. I think Bobby was also, and I think even Joe was a little naive. So I think that they were naive, that the forces, that they thought that the government forces that they had behind them were as strong or stronger than the forces they were going up against. And that would be true. Their government forces are stronger than the forces they were going up against. What they didn't understand was that the CIA and the mafia in collusion had already infiltrated the government, which was Bobby's great revelation in 1962 that Ryder found. It's holy crap, Bobby's going, there's a union between the mob and the government, and they're taking over the government. And again, Bobby, again, in his naivete, didn't underestimate how deeply they had infiltrated the government.
So what do you think happened to Bobby?
Was Bobby truly assassinated?
There's enough questions around the RFK assassination to make us wonder what's actually going on. And if somebody wants to make a film about the RFK assassination and you want me to help you with consulting you on what I have discovered on the RFK assassination, I'd be more than happy to help you. But yes, there's there's some seriously high weirdness around that assassination. We did not get near it because we started out to make like a 50-minute film. We were hoping it might get to be an hour, and it ended up being an hour and a half, and I didn't want to go over that length. I think an hour and a half is about what I call your butt starts getting crazy at an hour and a half. You got to get up and walk around.
Yeah, see, people wanted us to include all kinds of different stuff, and I'm like, do you want to sit there for 4 hours and watch this film? Nobody wants to sit there for 4 hours and watch a movie. Well, I mean, not the regular public. I haven't even watched the new Quentin Tarantino movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because it's so long, and I don't want to sit there. And Quentin Tarantino is one of my favorite directors, so we had. It's not that we didn't do the research or know about a lot of these other things. It's just that we wanted to tell a cohesive story that made 100% sense.
Are you guys working on anything else right now?
Yes.
What's next for you guys? I'm sure you guys have tons of ideas floating through your heads. Are you in any stages right now of the next project?
Oh no, we're headlong into the next project.
Okay.
We're actually just waiting for funding to come from our distributor, who's slow as erosion paying us. And
what's the topic, if I could ask?
It's about the history of the MK Ultra programs
I was going to get into that
to around 1980 or so.
Are you going to include anything from Jack Ruby's doctor that came to his cell?
Oh yeah, well yeah, Gottlieb and all of them were going to be talked about for sure. So Jack Ruby, he got completely mind screwed by the MK Ultra program. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, he started talking about fairies and goblins and made him do it and all
LSD.
that.
Yeah, he got a little psychedelic too.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Little drop of LSD in your water there.
Well, I'm
not only going to help you promote this one, I'm going to promote the next one too.
Yeah, we have a question from Don Rogers. I want to get to some of these questions. Do you think Marilyn Monroe was a victim of JFK's choices? What happened to Marilyn Monroe? Did she just die like everybody thought, or was it part of a conspiracy as well?
I think she was knocked off by the same forces that were involved in what happened that day.
Okay. Also, we have a question from, let's see. Well, we answered this one from Sierra Lions. If Kennedy wasn't shot, what happened to him afterward? And you said he probably went to an island and lived out his life. You also said he had Addison's disease, so he may not have lived that much longer anyway.
No.
Okay.
Generally, Addison's disease is about a 10-year, and then you're dead. And he was about 7 years into it. So,
yeah, for people that don't know what Addison's disease is, it's a autoimmune disorder that causes constant pain. And JFK had to wear a back and a neck brace a lot of the time. He would mostly be wearing it in private, but there's a few pictures of him that we put in the documentary of him in public on crutches and wearing a back brace.
Okay, there's a question here from Joshua Carpenter, who's a frequent watcher of the channel, and he says, if they wanted JFK out of office, why couldn't they just stage a Monica Lewinsky or use blackmail on him? So why did they have to assassinate him in such a way where it was such a huge spectacle? Why not just disgrace him and remove him from office?
Well, there wasn't a they. It was Kennedy that was behind this whole thing. And they wanted to keep it as secret as possible. So if they did why would Kennedy destroy his reputation by having a Monica Lewinsky? I mean, it was Kennedy that was the force behind the whole faking of it. So, he wanted what happened is that he had been in discussions with a famous historian. We have it in the film, a famous historian who was an expert on Abraham Lincoln. And Kennedy asked him, a few months before the assassination, so-called assassination, do you think that if Lincoln had lived, he'd have the reputation he has now? They said, absolutely not. The New South would have raked Lincoln apart and would destroyed his reputation. He went out like a hero. And that's pretty much, I think, instilled the idea in Kennedy that he knew he had all these enemies, just like Lincoln 100 years earlier. In fact, the presidencies are very eerily parallel, and I think he chose to go out as a martyr, and that way he would have an eternal flame at Arlington Cemetery. People would cry, and all the stuff that happened. And
he would have an airport named after him. He would have a library named after him. And doing that publicly creates the perception that it really happened. It's kind of like, this is just an example, SEAL Team 6 going in to kill Osama bin Laden instead of him just dying in a cave.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It gives the public perception of, yeah, well, in the case of JFK, it's something different. But with Osama bin Laden, after SEAL Team 6 went in and took him out, America was like, yeah, go America.
It's the opposite of a false flag.
Exactly.
What do you guys speculate? I have one last question, Chad, then you can take it. What do you guys speculate? We talked about the how many pages is in the Warren Commission that didn't come out, 4,000 pages or whatever was redacted still. Do you guys have any speculations personally what you think is in there? I mean, something has to be in there why they're not releasing all of it. What do you guys think? I mean, I'm not asking for factual information, but what do you think is behind that?
I'm sure they, either it's just BS. It could be just page after page of BS that they just came up with, which is very likely, or they actually did an investigation and asked experts to look at this Zapruder film, and maybe even got a couple of Hollywood people to go, that's not how a gunshot looks, or had even snipers say that's not how a high-powered rifle would act when it hit a head. I'm guessing they had people like that saying things that were completely adverse to what their main storyline was, which was coming from Johnson. Johnson's the main beneficiary of the faking of the death. Don't forget. Mm-hmm. So Johnson's in every way, his interest is to enforce the idea that a lone gunman assassinated Kennedy.
So you think he was going to take as well, Johnson?
Oh, Johnson,
sure, right? Yeah, right. So he not only benefited, but he got headed to the class of his own organization.
Johnson is a whole nother kind of a villain. He's he assassinated his way to the Senate. Many people died on the way up, and he was known as a killer and a really nasty guy. He hated the Kennedys. He couldn't wait to get rid of them. And when John came to him and said, "I need you to set this all up in Dallas, because you're the guy who owns Texas, so we'll do it there. And then you got to get your oath of office before you leave Texas so that you're in control of both Texas and now Washington, D.C., so you're in control of both ends of the law enforcement investigation." It was all done way ahead of time, all figured out way ahead of time. None of it was by accident. Johnson was the main integral axle of the wheel that turned the entire thing going. And, he even told his girlfriend the night before, "Honey, tomorrow we never have to worry about the Kennedys again." And she thought that he knew about the assassination, but he didn't really say that, did he? He just said you didn't have to worry about them ever again.
Yeah, we have a question from Brent who says, was Stanley Kubrick's death faked? People say that Stanley Kubrick made the moon landings in a Hollywood basement, but what do you think about that?
Well, actually, he made them in a blimp stage 40 miles north of where he lived in England at the time. But, the weird thing about Stanley Kubrick's death is that it was exactly 666 days before January 1st, 2001, which is the year of his most famous film. And that is curious and makes you think that maybe it was faked. And then I had another person who contacted me about all this back in 2012, maybe. And he was involved with Kubrick stuff. And I asked him, I said, do you think, what a coincidence that his death was exactly 666 days before 2001. And he said, yeah, that is quite a coincidence. That would be something that Stanley would do. And I thought, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, there's a lot of people that think that, let me put this the right way. They put up a new building at the World Trade Complex in 1999 called the Odyssey Building. And it was a building that looked just like the Black Monolith in 2001. And it was, I think, building number 6 out of the 7 buildings in the World Trade Center. And it was clearly a monument to Stanley Kubrick and his film 2001: A Space Odyssey. And then, the attack itself happens in 2001. Kubrick's film is in 2001. And a lot of people, this guy in particular, was implying to me that Kubrick faked his death so that he could do part 2 of the Apollo moon landings, i.e. 9/11. I don't know if it's true, but this guy was high up in some certain circles and was implying that exact thing.
Okay, and we have another question, and that is, can Jay explain the Bush connection, the Bush family connection? I don't know if that's specific enough, but if you want to go ahead, yeah.
Well, I mean, there's speculation that George Bush was involved, and he did go to a trial. And somebody asked him on stand, where were you on November 22nd, 1963? And I think he's the only person in America who couldn't remember where he was that day. And he was the congressman from that area of Texas. And there's enough high weirdness around George Bush Sr. to think that he might have been involved. What I think is really going on is that the Bushes are New England nobility, and so are the Kennedys. They clearly knew each other. Their families clearly commiserated. So I think that the Bushes were part of the Johnson cabal in Texas, running around on the ground, make sure that everything stayed kosher.
Yeah, wasn't Bush Sr. was the head of the CIA at one point? Isn't that correct?
Right. During 1977, he was the head of the 76. He was the head of the CIA for 1 year, but he was probably CIA all the time.
Not many people know this, but George Bush Sr.'s son, the one that became president, his childhood friend was actually the one that they implicated for Reagan's attempted assassination.
No, that's exactly right. John Hinckley Jr., his father, John Hinckley Sr., is a business associate of George Bush Sr. In fact, they were meeting that day that Reagan got shot.
Just a coincidence.
Yeah. And of course, George Bush would have become president if Reagan had died. So you tell me. If that would be like Lee Harvey Oswald's dad was an associate of Lyndon Baines Johnson.
Yeah. Coincidental, right? We're not conspiracy theorists at all. Coincidence.
Yeah, something really quick that I want to bring up that I actually mentioned during the premiere of our film JFKX, and I've mentioned on a couple of shows, and it was to your question about the JFK files earlier, Ken, which a lot of people don't know, that during the Boston Marathon bombing, I think was April 15th of 2013, everyone really remembers the Boston Marathon bombing, the 2 bombs that went off during the Boston Marathon. But there was a third bomb. 100%, you can look it up. And that third bomb went off at the JFK Memorial Library.
Wow.
In the archives department. So it seems like whoever was doing that also wanted to take something out that was being hidden at the JFK Memorial Library, and they were trying to shift focus onto something else. It's very difficult to find out any kind of information about it because they've really hidden it and they've buried it online. But you can type into Google third bomb going off at Boston Marathon or JFK Memorial Library bombing. There's just a few articles, and they try and kind of play it off as like a fire, but there's a police chief that was quoted saying on the scanner, we have another bomb going off, and it's at the JFK Memorial Library in the archives department.
Speaking of crazy bombs going off, what do you guys think about the Georgia Guidestones? You guys have any theories at all? Have you looked into that? Because they have some footage of that. It's very rare, right? It's very small, sparse.
Yeah, I bear a lot of responsibility for being the person who made the Georgia Guidestones famous in my 2006 film, 2012, The Odyssey, in which we go to the Georgia Guidestones. First time it was ever presented to the public. And since then, it got presented all over the place. But, I feel bad about it because, it was a beautiful monument. I don't think it deserved to be blown apart. But then again, the whole blowing apart thing is so suspicious because not only does it happen at 3:33 in the morning, but they tear it down by noon the next day.
Yeah,
There's no police investigation. There's nobody looks into the car that's leaving the scene, seeing if they can see a plate number or anything. And I generally concluded by the end that the people that built it are the ones that took it down. And I think they took it down because they'd gone too far with the whole keep the population at 500,000 or less thing, or 500 million or less thing. And that they had actually, spoken up too soon and let out information that they perhaps didn't want let out, especially right before the time of, the thing that people.
I take certain responsibility for that. I moved to Georgia, and then I was supposed to go see him about a month before that happened, and then all of a sudden it's gone, so I can't go look at it.
Yeah, and the way the bombs blew off, they kind of just melted the thing like it was a hot knife through butter, if you know what I mean. I mean, the way that it just collapsed like that, it was like, wow, whoever did this really knew what they were doing.
Well, speculation was it was some kind of energy weapon. I don't know. The film, I don't know. Again, the film, I'm not a film person. I don't know how they did that, but that could have been completely misdirection as well. They could have just thrown that out there like they found this information and it wasn't that at all. I don't know.
I don't think that a dynamite blast, and I've worked with dynamite, I don't think it cuts at angles like that. Nah, not through solid granite. No.
Well, the other conspiracy we could talk about for like 2 seconds is the Maui thing. I mean, that's another misdirection kind of situation. Jay, do you have any thing to add on that?
Real estate agents and land speculators have been burning down places for centuries. I mean, the Great London Fire of 1666, it's a whole bunch of peasants living there. And then there's this big, huge fire. Everybody has to leave. And then all of a sudden, the entire city of London, the financial base of the entire world is built right in its place. Like, oh, what a coincidence that is. The richest
Oprah's house is good, and they left all the blue roofs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, all the blue roofs. Yeah, that would indicate a direct energy weapon for sure.
Or some kind of technology we can't even fathom.
Yeah. The spectrum would be, the light is coming in as blue, so it won't see blue is the whole theory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you guys, what are some of the feedback that you're hearing from your documentary? What are some of the viewers saying?
I think that the boomer generation is having a hard time with it. My generation, they're having a real hard time with it. They got it fixed in their head that it's either, Oswald or a conspiracy, but everybody else seems to be okay with it outside of the conspiracy community. The Xers and the millennials and especially the Zers, they seem just fine. Oh, yeah. I've had people contact me. Oh, yeah. I told mom and dad to cool it. It's over. Mom and dad, don't even bring it up anymore. We now know what happened. And I think, so the boomers and maybe the older Xers are like, this isn't true. It can't be true. It has to be a drama. But everybody else is like, yeah, I'm glad it's over now. We can go on to the next one.
Yeah, well, it's also really interesting too how, because this is the way that it's going to work, and Jay's already experienced this with doing his Kubrick's Odyssey movies. Like now people are, there's TikTok videos with thousands and thousands of views talking about Jay's work without mentioning Jay's work. They're just, taking it on as their own. That's exactly what's going to happen with this film. In about 5 to 10 years from now, this is what everyone's going to be talking about. They're going to take our thought, they're going to take our idea, and they're going to incorporate it and turn it into their own. And that's not, I don't have a problem with that. And I know Jay's had it happen several times to him, and he doesn't have a problem with that. But right now, the people are super triggered. It was like what I was talking about earlier. The conspiracy theorists don't like it because it wrecks and ruins all of their research that they've done. And we know that certain people have spent years of their life researching an event, and then here we come along and tell them that they're all wrong, essentially. So that's not doing well with them, and they're getting triggered by that, and they're getting writing bad comments, writing bad reviews. I mean, I've gotten just as many people telling me that they hate it as they loved it, and that's some of the comments on Amazon and on some other platforms as well. People are like, "Hey, you either love this film or you hate it. There's not really any in between." So that's really where we are right now.
Yeah, it's the way that Schopenhauer's ideas. He said that ideas permeate society. So at first they mock you. No, first they ignore you, then they mock you, and then they say, "Oh yeah, we knew that all the time." That's how it works. And so I had to accept that, that people weren't going to say, Jay Weidner's a genius for figuring out the Kubrick stuff with the moon landings, because I knew that eventually it was just going to be, oh, yeah, we knew it all the time. Jay Weidner didn't come up with anything new. And that's what's going to happen here. They're going to say, oh, you're an idiot, you're horrible. And then they're going to ignore me. And then they're going to say, oh, yeah, we knew that all the time. Big deal.
Yeah, we have to wrap it up soon, but I would be ashamed if I couldn't ask you this one question, Jay. And that is, I remember there were always 4 people in the car for the JFK assassination, and I believe in the Mandela effect. Now there are 6 people. What do you originally remember?
That's actually a propaganda error. Ryder and I discovered that early on, and that it's 6 seats. The driver and the Secret Service in the front seat, Connolly and his wife in the middle, and Jackie and Jack in the back. But what they did, as soon as the assassination happened, Life magazine prints a limousine with 4 seats and acts like that's it. And then all of a sudden, all the limousines you see in the propaganda that comes afterwards is all 4 seats, making everyone go crazy. And I do believe that the limo. So I've heard 2 different things with the limo in my time. The one thing I heard was that Johnson immediately had the limo squeezed together in a junkyard and pressed and thrown away. That's what I heard for years and years and years. Now I hear, since the film came out, that supposedly it's in the Gerald Ford Museum in Michigan, the original limo. The problem is the one in Michigan is 4 seats. It's not 6 seats. Mm-hmm. So what happened is right before the assassination, they took the 4-seat limo and they modified it. And they went through an extensive modification of the limousine, turning it into a 6-seat. And I believe that's when they put the trap door into the trunk at that point in time, because they were getting it ready for the big event, right? That's why they modified it. And I believe that that's the cause of all the confusion between it. I think it was done on purpose, by the way, just for this reason.
That could definitely signal that the whole thing was released fake, as far as everything completely, right? I mean, how do you miss that? I mean, I've seen some museums, like you mentioned, that said that there was a 4-seat car. You can't miss that.
And nobody questions it. That's what's really weird about it.
Right.
Nobody questions any of this. That's what Ryder and I kept coming up against. Basic questions that nobody ever answered. Like, why isn't anyone reacting to a high-powered rifle going off in the square there? Nobody. I mean, it's just crazy. Why didn't ABC, CBS, and NBC send affiliate cameramen, 16-millimeter Bolex cameras, down there to get the president in the cavalcade? They didn't. Yet they all have the equipment, the ability to do it all. And we proved that actually they were there with their cameras. They just weren't shooting Kennedy.
Interesting.
It's a very interesting theory, guys. I'm looking forward to watching it. The Solving the Crime of the Century, JFKX, on Amazon Prime. So Have you guys got any last words that you want to say before we wrap up the show?
Yeah, this is the most different JFK film ever made by far. Nothing compares to what we reveal in this film. Because remember, we took the Zapruder film and enhanced it through modern technology so that you can actually see it in all of its clarity, like looking through a piece of glass.
Yeah, somebody had asked, well, why didn't you show the Zapruder film? You guys can see it on YouTube, but you could also see it enhanced in their documentary, which is probably the documentary.
Yep. Yeah. The only place you can see the enhanced version is in our film. There's none of that in any of the things that you can find.
Right.
Yeah, we have a real problem within the community, guys, and that people are always saying, give me the truth. I want the truth. We want the truth, but really what they want is to hear their own preconceived thoughts and ideas regurgitated directly back to them, right? Yeah. And this film that me and Jay put together, JFK X, Solving the Crime of the Century, breaks the mold of what you think really happened on November 22nd, 1963, 60 years ago today. And it's a healing film. Healing from that trauma that was inflicted upon the world and the United States 60 years ago. And it's unlike anything that you've heard before, and it explains everything that we've said here today in much greater detail. You really have to see it. It's a very difficult thing just to talk about. You really need to see what we're talking about. And we open up that film with what's in the JFK files. What's so devastating to the public that the JFK files can't be released? And I think what is in those files is in our film. And thanks so much for having us on, guys.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch it personally. Everybody out there, I would suggest you watch it as well. Then we could talk about it later. Ryder, Jay, why don't you just tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, I'm at jweidner.com, jayweidner.com. Have a show on YouTube called Reality Check, and all of my films are up on Gaia.com and Amazon.com. I just want to say one thing before I go, and that is the main evidence that we use in the film to explain our point of view is a film. So therefore, we couldn't write an essay or a book, or we made a film about the film that reveals the truth. And the only way you can do that is by making a film. That's why we did it this way.
You can find me, you can check out the movie, of course, JFKX, Solving the Crime of the Century on Amazon Prime, a very affordable price. You can also check out jfkx.org, I believe is the name of the website that we have up for the film. And if you want more of my content, I have a YouTube channel called Raised by Giants, and also on all the different podcast platforms. And thank you guys so much. Really appreciate your time this evening. Wonderful conversation. And thanks everyone in the chat.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Gentlemen. Thank you. Going to end the live stream. Thank you for everybody who joined us and watched all the way until the end. We appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay.